All right, here we go. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. A vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This vlogcast started as a combination of spite and a Streisand effect because it's cold, and keeping my NVIDIA card running is one of the easiest ways of keeping my house warm. Part of this is to follow through with the old adage that sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I'm your main host. I'm known as Shujin Tribble. You can find me pretty much everywhere under that name. That's Shujin. Hi. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an interesting night, and it may be a relatively short night, and I'll explain why in a couple of moments. Joining from the middle of the U.S., where, surprisingly enough, there is not a snow bomb going off weather-wise. Good evening, Brigid.
Good evening. We might get some ice on Thursday though. But how are you doing? I'm kind of glad you don't live on the coast.
Yeah, true enough. Now, by the way, for anybody that's listening at this point, right now it is just the two of us. It may change. We're gonna see how this plays out. Know full well that UnrenownedTech is not going to be with us tonight. He had another engagement that he's dealing with, so no big thing. We don't have to worry about weather-wise for him. But I have had a number of people who have gotten in touch with me and are just like, "Hey, Shu, are you okay?" Yeah, man. What are you talking about? What's the matter? Are you gonna get hit with this like snow bomb? What snow bomb? And I had to look it up, and it's just like, oh, that. Yeah, no, no, not a problem for me. See, where I live, for anybody that takes a look at the map, New York City, pretty much everybody knows where New York City is because it's right at the mouth of that fish that's sticking out of the water. That's called Long Island. That's where I used to live. I am to the left of New York City and up a little bit, about give or take roughly 500 miles. I don't remember how many kilometers it is, all right? Just leave me the frick alone about this one. But I'm significantly inland, so I don't have to worry about that. What I have to worry about every once in a while is lake effect snow. That's fun. But yeah, I'm okay as far as that's concerned. It looks like the majority of all that snow that's being hit, I guess it's really appreciable from a little bit south of New York City and going up the coast. So, up through Boston, I saw news reports from Boston were not looking really good. I did not check in to see what's going on with PEI and Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, that kind of thing. So I don't know how bad it is for them up there, but I gotta imagine this is not really great. But where I am, fortunately, no big thing. But thank you for asking. Like I said earlier, though, weather-wise, it didn't look like there was very much of anything going on by you, by the way. Which, by the way, I did look at the Earth map globe swirly things. You remember that thing? I still have that bookmarked. I need to put that in
The
the show notes.
what was it? The
The school
milk
dot
school?
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it cool?
that is so much fun. That
Isn't
is,
it?
but it keeps getting you broken on Facebook. What the hell, man?
Oh, Facebook always
I
get
don't.
zucks me for spam if I post any links to it. I don't know why they hate it, but they
I
do.
I don't know. Maybe they're misinterpreting all those little like tight swirly things as nipples or something. I don't know.
I don't know, but anytime I've ever posted a link to it or whatever, I always get zucked for spam. I'm like, are you serious?
Eh, Whatever it is. Anyway, so as I said, hi. Yeah, right now it is just the two of us. We'll see. We'll see what plays. If it turns out that it is just the two of us for tonight, which is possible, you know, we'll just kick back. We won't go too terribly nasty, and we probably won't go that long. So we'll see from here. However, as always, if you do join us live, you're more than welcome to, tappity tappity on your keyboards and join us on the live chat over there, which at the moment is just Stephanie. That's okay. Felis has got something going on for herself too. I have tried to remind her on multiple occasions not to burn herself cooking, for whatever good that is. She's part cat. She doesn't listen to me. As far as drink is concerned, by the way, people watching are probably gonna really wonder what in the hell. I am drinking my Loganberry again, and I'm actually drinking it out of the bottle itself. Now, no, it's not the syrup that I'm drinking. There's very little syrup that was left, so I just filled the water in here. It's even more diluted than it really needs to be. So, I figured I'm only gonna have to, rinse it out and get rid of the bottle, so I might as well just put it to use because it's gonna look cool on camera. Watch. Although there is one small problem with doing that. That's not a brain freeze that happens, but there is definite pain that goes on in the back of the throat, and it's a very, very different thing from having a brain freeze, and I'm an idiot. Nothing new there, right? Whatever. But, yeah, we'll see. Oh, and as far as to why do I have this weird pink fluffy thing around my shoulders? Yeah, it's I did not go anywhere. I did not do anything. So I decided that tonight, screw it. I'm just wearing the big pink fluffy robe because you know what? It's one of those nights, man. I don't whatever.
Freaking cold.
Well, yeah. I mean that there is part of that, but it's just one of those things where it's just like I just want to be comfy. Do I have slippers to put? Somebody bought me years ago. Somebody bought me slippers, and not just any slippers, but slippers with electronics in them, because the slippers are shaped like little tribbles, so that when I walk on them, they squeak. I don't wear them. You can probably imagine, I don't wear them around the house. Partly because they're a little bit too small for my feet. I got wide ass feet. So, whatever. It is what it is. So it's going to be one of those nights. But otherwise, you're doing okay? I mean, yes, we were talking before the show started, but I mean, physically, you're harmonious for the time being, right?
Yeah, just kind of grogged out, but that's all right.
All right. There are two kind of cool things I want to tell everybody about because I can. Granted, we don't have we don't make a lot of splash out there in the podcast circles, but I don't care. Two cool things that happened. One, I got to talk to Tiny Tribble on Friday. He had a bad thing happen at school because he went back to college. 1 a.m., the fire alarm goes off. He's already been asleep for a little while. This was not cool. But see, since he is in a quad, it doesn't matter which building it goes off in. Each of those 4 buildings go off, so everybody gets out. He couldn't get back to sleep again until almost 4. He apparently had a dream in French. I've never done that in Spanish. But on the other side of the equation, I have had dreams about working telephone sales. So, I mean, traumatic experiences do happen that way. It's been a couple years since I last took French, so it was kind of funny for me. And the fun part? 2 words. Dean's List. So,
Nice.
I'm pretty happy about that. He's done pretty well. I forget what he said. 3.8. I think is where he is at the moment.
Wow,
Something like
that's
that. So
fantastic.
he's doing good. He's doing good. I'm really proud of him. And the last item I'm going to give you guys, for those of you that, like me, don't get out very much, like almost ever. Nominally, today would have been, the Saturdays where I would have gone out with my friends and whatnot. But the friends I would normally get together with, or the hosting stuff, they're going to be going on a cruise, or at least they're scheduled to be going out on a cruise, specifically for tabletop gamers. So it's a little bit more of a geek group, admittedly. So we'll see how this plays out. And so I've not been out. I'm probably going to get out sometime the next couple of days to, actually do some food shopping. But I had to hook up my car to a battery charger because I don't get out very much, and it's been negative 16 around here. If you have to ask, negative 16, is that Celsius or Fahrenheit? It's negative. It doesn't matter at that point. It's just cold. But it turns out I had to fix, sort of, the car charger because the wires going into the clips that connect to the battery, there were only about, I don't know, 10 strands of copper wire that was still connected anymore. So I had to take those apart, put it back together again, and it's fine. It's float charging outside, and I'm just leaving it go because, so long as the battery doesn't explode, I'm happy. So if you're one of those folks like me and you are in an area where it's safe to do it, i.e. you don't have to worry about anybody breaking into your vehicle, you might want to consider investing $50 in a car charger and a really good extension cord to keep your car float charged, just in case. Sideways on top of everything else, France. Joseph, good morning. You made it with us. How are you?
Good morning. How's the sound today?
We're doing pretty all right at the moment.
Okay, I'm using push to talk from the get-go today.
No worries. I need to, there we go. I need to bring your audio down a little bit because, no, don't do anything. I had your audio turned up quite a bit from last time, and that is my fault. So I should have you pretty well good.
No, it's not your fault because I changed from Android back to iPhone. So changing yet again.
Well, no, considering that I had your audio up to almost as loud as my side would let it go. So I got it fixed up over here.
Okay, good.
So while before I go ahead and jump into anything else, how are you doing? Oh, it's been a little bit. I'm hoping that you're staying healthy and safe and everything out over there.
Well, the numbers are way, way, way up here, which is kind of amazing because there's more than 500,000 or 50,000 cases a day. 50,000 or 500,000? Yeah, that has to be 50,000. Yeah. But we're going to soon be past the population of the country for the number of infections here. But yeah, keeping up. Sorry I didn't make it last week. Once again, I stayed awake until stupid o'clock in the morning and ended up not being able to wake up on time.
Dude, it's voluntary time. I'm not going to dock your pay or anything. You don't have to apologize. So long as we know that you're safe and healthy, that's all that really matters in the end. So no worries. But it is good to hear you.
Yeah, you too, sir. Oh, we're not very many this week.
No. So things are probably going to end up being relatively short, which we'll see how it plays out. Anyway, how about I go ahead and get things rolling over here. We'll come back. We'll have we'll be able to have the horrible scopes and have a little bit of fun, kind of work it from there. before I launch into that, I did go look up for Rafe Badawi's condition. Nothing new at the time. So, as of the recording of tonight's show, it has now been 9 years, 7 months, 15 days out of a 10-year sentence for Rafe Badawi, who was unjustly incarcerated for thought crimes. Our hopes and thoughts are still with you and your family. We are still waiting, and we're still hoping. So let me get things going over here. So 5 minutes on the clock for you. Your 5-minute freestyle is going to start right now. TOTTERTEETER. Now, I know. Some people are just feeling like it's verbal fingers on a blackboard. I know. I saw a thing about how there are unwritten rules in English. And one of them is that there is a certain way that things are supposed to work. And one of them also involved how vowel placement is supposed to work in sentence structure. So things like teeter, totter, it's supposed to be E and then O. So saying totter, teeter doesn't work. It's kind of the same way that you don't hear talk, tick. You don't hear clop, clip. We're just naturally, we just go to, well, tick-tock and clip-clop. Subsequently, teeter-totter. The reason for doing this one is that we don't think about these things. We kind of take these things for granted. It's just the way that things are. And they're ingrained in us in such an early point that we don't even think about it. It's the meta of conversation. It's the meta of communication itself. And I know, a lot of people hate using the term meta right now because, thank you, Facebook, screwing over the company that's actually called Meta, but leave that aside for a moment. But it's the way that we do things, and we don't even think about it. One of the things that Brigid and I were talking about before we got started tonight had to do a lot with how you comport yourself in a professional environment. I'm not going to get into the complete details because the details aren't completely relevant. But there is a way that we do things. There is an expectation of how we do things. And it goes with all things that we do. I mean, as part of a culture, as part of a society, forgive me for using the expression for a moment, we expect that people will behave themselves in a certain fashion. And conversely, we expect that we ourselves would deal with whatever in the same way. And that doesn't happen. That doesn't always happen. We've kind of talked about that in politics here in the U.S., how things have operated in the past. The expectation of how you're supposed to comport yourself has been subverted for the, well, dog-eat-dog mentality. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get mine, and whether or not you get yours is, well, nothing to do with me. So screw you, I got mine. And that happens in business, too. The problem is, just like I had said a couple of weeks ago, where I want to be a conservative, fiscally at the very least. I want to be conservative for how government is supposed to operate, but I can't because it doesn't work, because greed gets involved. And whether it's monetary greed or greed for whatever passes for, you'll pardon the expression, power, you still have to have somebody overseeing. You need the checks and balances. You need some group to be able to just say, hey, no, you're not playing by the rules. You need a referee. That's what government is supposed to do. It's supposed to self-regulate. And we are supposed to self-regulate how we behave. and we expect that businesses should do the same. So, when you start hearing in business the listings go up that say, well, there's a labor shortage, so we can't keep the doors open right now, so sorry you can't get your $2 burrito today. And there's another sign attached to it, next to it, that says, there's no labor shortage. We're being treated like crap, and we have resigned en masse. You know, you might want to really start thinking which one is being communicated correctly. Especially when there's a lot of this stuff going on back and forth in a lot of different areas. Episode 393 on the docket. Reality walks into a bar. I know. It starts to sound like it's some kind of a joke, unfortunately, but there's a video that I linked for the show notes this time, which, yeah, I know, it's Richard Dawkins. I know, not the shining example that we would like. But the first part of the video is the important part, where an older gentleman was there as part of the Q&A and said, what do you say to somebody who has been involved with the church for, 50, 60 years? What do you tell somebody at this point? That's the important piece. Not what Dawkins said afterwards, but the question mark of what happens to a life after all this time that's been, had half of its life sucked away by mythology. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about this and kind of see where it takes us. Before we get on over to that, though, how about we do with the horrible scopes? Because, well, Lord knows, we could use a good smile and a good laugh before we get into, having to deal directly with Dr. Dawkins. Because I know, don't tell me. He's a bit of a tool. Sadly. I don't say that because I don't want him to be a tool. I don't want anybody to be a tool. Wheaton's rule.
Yeah, he kind of is.
Yeah. So, for those of you that know what your astrological signs are, cool. Here are your horrible scopes for the week. If you don't know what it is, copy off of somebody else's homework. I don't really much care. Rolling. Aries. After a night of drinking with your friends, there will be a bright light and your car radio will jump frequencies to say, you will not be harmed. You will listen. You will decide. And there's going to be a black box with maroon pajamas in the trunk. Do not lose the instruction manual.
Taurus. Plan for a short car trip this week. You could start by hooking up your car's battery to a charger to keep it from freezing cold in negative 16-degree weather. Does it matter if it's Celsius or freedom units? Either way, it's still brrr.
Yeah, I occasionally have to tell the people that don't understand about Celsius versus heat freedom units. Once you get into negative Celsius, it's just degrees of hurt. Yeah, it's exactly it.
Gemini. Your mental shortcomings are from a lack of adequate calories, minerals, and vitamins consumed. Next time you're out, get some children's chewable multivitamins to help. You're already tasting it in the back of your mouth and salivating, aren't you? See? You never really grew up.
I didn't want to name brand names, but we all know which ones that is. Cancer Moonchild. There are 7 states and 4 provinces that do not want your car driving on its roadways right now. Take a car in for service, but listen closely when they pull it into the bay. If you hear the mechanic narrating into his phone's camera and starts off with customer states, it's gonna be expensive.
You know, if you don't know how to tell the difference between peppers with 200 Scoville units and 2 million Scoville units, you will eventually be pranked by your friends. Keep a small can of condensed milk nearby for this eventual emergency.
Virgo. Take note of these names: Ryan Reynolds, Bill Big T, and Rhino Romano. You know what they have in common? They each have repeated letters in their names and each played a double letter character in Marvel properties. Wade Wilson, Bruce Banner, and Peter Parker, respectively. What does this mean for you this week? A win at trivia night.
Actually, I had to look those up. That was actually really good. Libra, we've got a better trivia answer for you, and it's not T-negative. How did Alfred the Butler learn Batgirl's secret identity? The Penguin wanted to marry her, sent his goons to kidnap a priest, and he allowed himself to be taken in the priest's place. Trust us, that is the right answer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scorpio. Yeah, it's been a long time since I watched that, but wow. Scorpio. You didn't think that pitiful Windows Defender was going to keep us out of your computer, did you, Scorpio? Try this on for size. See? Documents and settings. All users. Application data. Microsoft. Windows NT. Microsoft Fax. Why is there a file there called pbholydiver.rm? You know what RM is in Linux? Remove. This is your last chance.
Sagittarius. That Palm Pilot 3C looks super nifty with the color screen and all. But sadly, the sync space will no longer work with your new computer since it won't have a communications port on the back. Time to retire the poor thing, though. Bring it to the pistol range and give it a proper Road Warrior's death. I actually have a Palm Pilot.
I've got a couple of them.
I was cleaning my basement last weekend, and yeah, I've got 3 of those in a box. Even the old black and white ones.
Matter of fact, the ones that I've got are actually the handspring visors. Tried to hook it up, even though it's got a USB base. Apparently nobody is doing the drivers for those anymore, so I can't even connect it to the stupid thing, which really sucks. Oh well, is what it is. Excuse me. Capricorn, here's a little challenge for you. Listen to these names: Jim Perry, Bob Eubanks, Wink Martindale, Bill Cullen, Snoop Dogg, Ken Ober, Bert Convey, Gene Rayburn, and Tom Kennedy. Do you know which one were game show hosts and which ones weren't? If you get the answer correct, you've been paying way too much attention to these names.
Is it
No.
5?
I'm not going to give the answer.
You're not going to say. I do remember some of those names.
You should recognize some of those names.
Yeah. Curious. The idea of you having a date with someone purporting to be the Krampus has changed into imagining it's going to turn into a one-night stand. So, we're giving up on this line of revenge. Instead, we're two-timing you. So here's your fortune cookie message for the week. Don't worry about the stock market. Invest in family. Lucky numbers: 21, 34, 22, 8, 43, 7.
Pisces. Last week you told you to buy a bulb of garlic, not a pound of it. Storing the extra is easy. Just put each bulb into a sandwich bag, then each bag into a freezer bag, and only take out the bulbs as you need them. Just don't tell any Italians you have extra garlic because they won't understand the term or will send a 4'7" grandmother after you. And you will not survive that.
Those are your horrible scopes for this week. Remember, if you like what you got, I don't know what to tell you. But if you'd like to bribe me for a nicer one, or conversely to be nastier to somebody else, you can always just ask. Bribery is not necessary, but asking would be. At least let me know that you're listening. I'll have these posted, of course, next week, and you can look them up and see what you think about them. I've got to plan ahead a little bit because February 14th is coming up, and I have to specifically plan ahead for that because February 14th is not Valentine's Day for me. It's Jack Benny's birthday. So I have to plan ahead for that one.
Yeah.
And I know there are a whole bunch of people right now who are just like, who? Don't worry about it. It's all.
It's going to be for Second Life, isn't it?
I will be doing my, I will do my traditional Second Life thing on the closest Wednesday to it. Because, I love me some old time radio comedies because there was a definite art to it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to believe that Mel Blanc had his own radio show for a while and he did a minimum of 3 characters a night.
Wow. He was a talented guy, though.
True that. I don't know that he got paid 3 times as much as everybody else, but, he did his job.
Probably.
If memory serves, I think he did make that joke on a couple of shows, though. If I'm gonna keep, no, who was that? No, that was Lou Costello made that joke back in the day. Abbott, if I'm gonna be doing 2 of these, characters, I want to get paid twice. That didn't work. So anyway, what we're talking about, like I said on the in the show notes, is the sunk cost fallacy. And it's something that's really annoying because, like I said for the intro, the idea that there are people who have invested so heavily for their lifetimes into things that simply are not going to pan out in any appreciable manner. It hurts to see them. It hurts to see him do stuff like this. Now, like I said, the example that I had was the old gentleman. No idea how old he was off the top of my head. But he had been a member of the church for a very long time, over 50 years. And, he's like, what do you say to somebody in this situation? And that's really it. Now, currently, we kind of have the same kind of thing happening with people who have sadly been sold a bill for the whole I'm not going to get vaccines. I'm going to go ahead and self-treat with whatever bullshit cure-alls are supposed to be happening. And then they get sick. And then they go begging and pleading in the hospital. Not all of them, I'll give them that much, but there's some who are literally begging and pleading and gasping their last breaths, asking for vaccines. And the medical personnel have to be in the unenviable position of going, can't. It's too late. It's well beyond too late. And the problem of it is, for those of us who are not in those situations, who are looking at it from the outside, what the hell can we even do sometimes? Because there are some people that are going to say, you have to allow these people to make their dumbass mistakes, even if it kills them. And I don't know what to do with this because that doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do either.
I don't know. Um,
Medical ethics sucks, doesn't it?
I mean, it really does. Um, Trying to think what to compare it to. I mean, there was a story that came out 2 or 3 days ago, and I don't remember if it was New York Times, Washington Post, whatever. But there was a person that was on next up on the list to get a transplant, heart transplant, as a matter of fact.
Yep,
And
saw
yeah,
that.
yeah, and hearts are just extremely rare. And he's refusing to get a COVID vaccine. Other than that, he was next up to get it. But that's a hill he's willing to die on and will die on
Yeah,
without that transplant. And people are outraged over that, going, well, it's not fair to withhold this organ from him because, he won't get a COVID vaccine. But it's like that's just a requirement. You have to have all your vaccinations to get a transplant. It's like that in every facility that does transplants. And it just really, it sucks that he is going to leave behind, a wife and kids, and he's, you know, because he's too afraid to get the vaccine.
yeah. The piece about that came to my mind at the time when I was reading about it was that if somebody is going to get a liver transplant, they cannot be drinking alcohol because that's just uh that's just going to damage a valuable resource because you're being self-destructive. And
Hmm.
if you're being self-destructive and there's somebody else that is not being self-destructive, who's got the better chance and who should get it at that point? So,
Yeah. And, but the thing about it is a lot of people don't understand that and they're upset about it. But, some even people were even making these really asinine remarks about, well, can I make a provision in my organ donation that I will only donate my organs to people who are unvaccinated? And it's like, no, you can't do that either. Um, transplant teams would never do that. You're willing to go on the black market in another country and attempt it, but you know, I mean, it's like that is not how this works, people. And for situations where there is like one organ and there's 5 or 6 people that are good candidates for it, they have transplant boards who will hash out who gets that organ. And they'll look at, like, has this person had any psychiatric issues in the past? If they tried to commit suicide 30 years ago, then that might make him ineligible because of a previous suicide attempt when they were a teen. They'll look at their age. I mean, all sorts of things. It's hard to make the decision of who gets it. And sometimes, the board meetings are very contentious because they can't agree on who. It's like, okay, we have to narrow it down to these 3 people. How do we choose? I mean, it's just, it's hard to make those kind of ethical decisions, and that's why they have boards do it. But, people have taken, an oath in medicine that they have to treat people who are sick, and it has nothing to do with their vaccination status or not. They have to put those feelings aside. But compassion fatigue is a thing now. There are some doctors who are openly saying, I would prefer not to have to do it, but I'm still going, you know, to treat people fairly, but I'm really tired of these unvaccinated people.
there's a piece about that brings me over to the concept of triage.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody that's kind of wondering how that plays out, watch a couple of episodes of MASH, and you can get a crash course, if you will, on what happens for triage. Somebody's gonna
Well,
die.
that's kind of
Sorry.
yeah, but triage is more an individual on the spot decision, whereas organ donors are concerned. It's the board of the decision that's a bit. It's probably just as difficult, but I think the most stressful situation is the ER triage. I would not want to even imagine myself being in that position.
I agree. What I was going to say though is that the main difference between what we would see triage happening with MASH versus real life, obviously, it's a TV series, so the rule of cool and drama, takes precedent regardless. But the idea of you have to ration out what is reasonable treatment wise against what can be done. And with going against, not against, but dealing with boards, medical boards for transplants especially, you kind of do the same thing. You've just got a longer timetable to do it in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it any much easier, Lord knows.
I mean, basically, how these hospitals that are operating under crisis standards of care, um, like suppose they have 2 ICU beds, and they have 9 people who need them. They're having to make very quick decisions on, okay, who's going to get the most benefit from that bed? Who can we save? There's going to be people that are going to die that if they were not having to, if they were not overwhelmed at the moment, they could save. But, now they can't save all of them. And so there are people who, maybe need a surgery urgently, but there's not a bed for them. So they're, you know, dying because they can't find room. So what they use is a point system, basically. And so they'll look, like if a COVID patient were to come in, they're going to look at what comorbidities you have. They're going to look at your age, all sorts of other factors. And if you're diabetic, they assign you 3 points. If you're obese, they might assign you two. If you happen to have asthma or something like that, they might assign you a point. If your blood values are within a certain range, they might take away points. And, they'll just add them up very quickly. And the person with the lowest points gets the bed or gets the ventilator or gets whatever. And the person with the highest points, they're put in palliative care. And that's how they do that. And it's horrible for the person who has to make that decision, but that's the only really fair way to do it. And then just tally up the points, and the lowest points wins.
There was a line from MASH that has never left me. And I'm trying to remember who it was that said it. I would love to look up right now, but if I go tappity tappity on my keyboard, it just comes straight through the microphone. Nobody needs that. The line was, and I think it was Henry. It was. I'm pretty sure it was Henry Blake that said it to Hawkeye. There are two things that I learned in medical. God, I've forgotten exactly how it was worded. Is that young men die in war. And rule 2 is doctors can't change rule number 1. Because Hawkeye was just, he was stressed. He was tired. They kept having hour after hour after hour of what they referred to as meatball surgery, which was sew these kids up enough so that they can get transported somewhere else. And, get them in, sew them up, keep them from bleeding out and dying, and ship them out as quick as you can.
Yeah.
And that is if any of that was real, even to any degree whatsoever, and from what I've understood, you kind of was,
Mhm.
I absolutely cannot fathom how some of these surgeons just didn't just walk into a minefield on their own and just lay down, you know?
Well, I mean, we're seeing that now
Yeah.
with, some doctors. Suicide rate amongst doctors right now and nurses is high, especially ones that work in the ER.
And then we've also got the ones who are just up and quitting because can't, burnt,
Can't do it anymore.
just can't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there has been a huge resignation. There are, people walking out. Nurses are walking out. Doctors have walked out. But there are other ones that, thought that they were doing fine, but it just went on for so long that, they've gone home and shot themselves because they just couldn't anymore. It broke them. And the unfair thing in this country, and I'm really hoping that this changes, is, doctors are especially at risk if they happen to, go seek any kind of mental health care or, take antidepressants or anything like that, because all of that stuff is reported to medical boards and they can lose their license. And I think that is so unfair. And, because a lot of them have PTSD now. They've been on a war footing for 2 years,
With no end in sight.
nonstop, no end in sight. And I think to punish them for seeking any kind of mental health resources is just grossly unfair.
Stephanie had mentioned, by the way, talking about the guy that was for the heart transplant. If he will not get the vaccine, it is predictable that he will not take his necessary medication after the operation. The
Right.
surgeons have to use the few organs available on those most likely to survive, which
Yep.
is exactly right. Oh, look at this. We've got another Russian bot going on. Let's
Yeah,
just go ahead and...
non-compliance is absolutely a factor in transplants. Absolutely. And another thing with COVID is, regardless of the variant, if you've had a solid organ transplant, even with the best care in the hospital, your chances of dying are just astronomical.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know this. I have, you know, I've seen it coming out of Illinois ever since this started. Back in February 2020, when the first patients started showing up, you know, uh, in the ER, shortness of breath, and had to be admitted, and they're the ones that ended up being in ICU for months at a time on a ventilator and going into septic shock and dying.
Which, as a side point, by the way, not exactly a great way to die. Just
No,
saying.
it's painful.
I'm not saying that there's any good way of dying. Well, actually, there is one
Well,
good way
there's
of dying.
not, but unless they have you on fentanyl or something like that, which could depress, your, respiration rate and kill you, it is painful to go into multiple organ failure.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that there is arguably only one good way of dying, and that's to have your entire brain, well, your entire head just explodified in an instant, because there is no consciousness of pain because it's just gone.
Yeah, or dying in your sleep,
That's
But most people are not lucky enough to have that happen.
there is that. Not advocating for people to go ahead and strap hand grenades to their heads and doing that. That's a really bad idea. Please do not do that.
No, but people going into organ failure have to be given a lot of pain meds to be kept comfortable because that shit's painful.
And the idea that this guy would not take required medications at that point, A, right on the money. B, well, they're not taking the necessary meds already. So, yeah, it does kind of stand to reason that if you're not doing it now, probably not going to do it later either. So, again, another couple of points into the ticker there. No pun
Yeah.
intended.
Yeah.
Now, what does all this medical stuff have to do with the sunk cost fallacy and the religion part? Well, it's kind of the same thing, just in a different way. Like I was talking about earlier, older gentlemen, 60s probably, or more. What do you tell somebody who's been involved with the church for 50 years? And we've seen what happens when people say, well, what the hell does atheism, offer to anybody? I know this is looking like it's a real hard stretch for me to put these together. Trust me, I've actually got a thing in there. And the general answer is, atheism really doesn't exactly. But there is camaraderie. There are people who have been there, done that, and come out the other side. Some with more battle scars than others, but still come through. And isn't that part of the problem? There are people who are in religion, and some who are very high on the totem poles, in positions of authority and power and prestige, who lose their belief because of reasons. And, well, now what do? I don't want to lose all the stuff because I've invested so much. I have all of my social stuff. I have my livelihood. I've got all this reputation. And if I change now, well, all that's gone. And they'll just continue living out basically a lie. And to me, these two pieces they're not identical, but they share commonalities.
Well, they're both, in all cases, I don't know how to put this simply, but I mean, in all cases, there's people living outside of reality.
Yeah.
People who, what we were talking about earlier, there are people who are even willing to die for their whatever ideology. I call it ideology, but a simpler way of saying it would be they're willing to die with whatever model they're imitating.
They're willing to
Because
die on that hill.
Yeah, because they don't seem to have any grasp or even any. They're not in touch with reality. Sometimes I would almost say that they don't even know what reality is. Like reality itself is a concept for these people. It's like an opinion, which is very strange. But it seems to be the case where for people who don't make decisions for themselves, who don't think for themselves, there is no difference between reality and somebody else's idea.
And it's so difficult for so many of us because we look at a lot of this stuff again from the outside. Usually, there are some things we can't really separate from, but we do our best. I would hope, and we have to try to figure out how to connect with people who are in those situations to try to pull them out of. And again, this is the whole thing where I was talking about earlier about how, medical ethics sucks. The ethics of how do you pull somebody out from this mythological thinking? Do you keep trying? Do you leave them be?
I don't know what it is, but it doesn't seem to be rooted in reason. The means of getting them out of this, because by what I can see, there's a divide between taking responsibility for your own life and letting somebody else do all the work for you and depending on somebody else's opinions, and to really take the leap and accept the responsibility of your own decisions over your own life. It almost seems to be like a switch in humans. Imagine yourself on, you've got two cliffs and an abyss between them. And I mean, it really, there's something has to motivate somebody to make the jump across the abyss to self-thought. And I think it's really that. I mean, really how to motivate somebody to think for themselves. I think that's what has to be done before anything, because anybody who hasn't taken that leap, who is willing to evaluate, if somebody's not willing to evaluate anything for themselves, they're just not going to listen to any reason.
Yeah, it's that triage thing again, isn't it, basically? If they're not willing
What?
to even examine, then is it even worthwhile?
Well, we have to try, but I mean, in trying, we're going to find out whether they're willing to do it or not.
That's fair.
And
But if you're looking for an actual solution, we're going to have to dig pretty.
yeah, it's just it's hard at times, because if you try to push too hard, then you have that backfire thing where they will double down even harder. And there are studies, that bear that out.
There's a certain point where the asshole quotient comes into play.
Well, I mean, not only that. Well, I mean, not only that. It's just if you try to present people with, facts and throw them factual information, for some reason, it causes people to double down on their views. I mean, there are studies that show this,
Yeah,
and I don't know why it works that way. What causes that, but it does.
yeah, we've talked about that before, where
Oh,
students, in grade and secondary school, they're just like, I don't want to raise my hand and have the wrong answer, because then everybody's going to see that I'm stupid, even if that's not really the way that it works. But for some reason, it's ingrained into so many things that we do.
Well, that's just the thing. In second and third grade, we're still in imitation mode. So, but where everybody's pretending to have all the answers already. And at that age, it's in survive by imitation mode. It's a bad thing to be wrong. Because normally whoever you're supposed to be following have all the answers. They always pretend to have all the answers. Who's ever presenting themselves as an authority figure. But I was just having a conversation with somebody where I'm working the other day, and there's also a few articles about this. The beauty of being wrong, because when you realize that you're wrong, well, you don't have to be wrong anymore. And the whole point of being right and wrong, basically, the best thing we can do for our own survival is make whatever's in our head match as closely as possible reality.
yeah.
When you're educating a kid, you're going to give them all, you're going to inform them to the best of your ability, what reality is really like, and you're kind of going to expect that one day or another, your kid is going to be testing whatever you taught them against reality. So all you do is just basically preparing them, giving them a thick enough textbook as you can so that they can take it and apply it against real life. But again, somebody who's not willing to consider reality, well, what use is all that? Because there's nothing to test it against.
There's that. By the way, Seeker, good to see you over there. Thanks. It's been a while. Good to see you back. Yeah, and it's funny the way that you kind of put that, because you got me thinking about some teachers that I have not necessarily liked in the day, exactly, but looking back on, I appreciate parts of what they did. And I'm specifically thinking of math teachers. If there's one thing that I taught my son, is that with math, there is something that is very special about it. Because math is either freaking right or it's freaking wrong. There is no in between. However, when I was in high school and, doing algebra or whatever the heck else it was that had like all kinds of formula, I had several times where I had teachers that were just like, look, you got the wrong answer. But following down what you did, I see where you made your mistake. And you were good up until you got to this point. So you're getting partial credit until this point, but I can't give you full because you didn't follow it all the way down. And, if you just go by the nice hard facts of did you get the right answer? No, I didn't. The bane of my existence, by the way, was the goddamn decimal point. I hated that I kept screwing up where it was supposed to be that as it may. Maybe there is something to be said for being able to explain to people, look, you got things right. You know how things work up to this point, and this is the point where things start to get really dicey. And one would think that after a certain point in life, people would be able to theoretically listen to stuff like that and have some kind of an open mind to at least hear the points that are being levied. And there's so many of them that are just like, nope, don't want to hear any of it. Just la 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 la, can't talk to me.
Yeah. I ran into that last night myself, and internet arguments are useless.
Yeah, well,
But you know how we have trolls, show up from time to time, especially, what we're talking about, COVID vaccines and all that stuff, and they come out of the woodwork,
I start putting the keywords in the show now. Man, we're getting trolls.
Troll
I
people.
like that. I
I
actually,
know.
it feels like, man, we've made it.
Yeah. But that happened last night on I'm not trying to like endorse a channel or anything like that, but there is a YouTube channel called MedCram that's guild can't talk words, that's geared towards medical people, but it's presented in such a way that average people can follow around. Very good channel. And some of the videos that they put out over the last 9 years are good enough quality that they actually count towards continuing education credits and things like that.
Nice.
And they're done by Dr. Schwelt. He's an intensivist, meaning he works in the ICU unit, and addresses things as far as like clinical outcomes, and does all sorts of things on making medical diagnoses on x-rays to ventilator settings and pressure and all this other stuff. They're medical grade good videos, So he put out one yesterday showing, graphs and studies and dosages and time on how the monoclonal antibodies work, on different variants, and, showed these wonderful graphs and all this other stuff. And then, showed where all of them, except for this one called, I'm probably going to butcher the name, sematrivimab, works against Omicron, but all of the other ones were 100% ineffective. They just flatlined. And as the variants came and went, it showed decreasing efficacy against, the one from Regeneron and the one that came from, GSK and all that stuff. And it showed where, it decreased because of the, escape. And they had to increase the dosages. And then it finally got to where when Omicron came along, they had zero efficacy. I mean, it flatlined. And so he said, this is the only one that we have that works against Omicron. It, started in development from the original SARS variant, in 2003. And there's limited dosages, but it will take time to ramp up the supply. And all of the trolls came out and said, well, why are you just, trying to justify the FDA removing the other ones for emergency use, and you're going to kill people and blah, 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 blah. And why don't you do a vaccine or do a video on vaccine injuries and all this other stuff? And I'm like, wait a minute, that is not within the scope of clinical practice in an ICU unit. This is not in scope. What the hell, people? But, he showed, the graph, the studies, all that stuff, and they lost their shit. And I'm like, wait, what? Why? And then they're like, well, why don't you test and see what variant somebody has before they're treated? And it's like, because
I can answer this one.
It takes 28 days to get back. Other than that, I don't know.
I was going to say they do, but it takes a little bit of time to figure that out because, genetic breakdown and figuring it from there.
28 days in the U.S. to get a sequence back. Now, some countries are faster than that. We suck at it here. It's not an insta test you can give somebody, and by the time you get the sequence back, weeks later, it's too late to intervene anyway. The treatment's going to be the same regardless of what you have. But people don't understand that. We have a real problem with science literacy in this country.
Yeah, and let's at least appreciate for just a couple of seconds the fact that this is even a thing. This sci-fi technology is like real. We can do this. It takes time, but we can do this. I remember when talking about checking DNA and genetic information against something else on file was just oh yeah, we're up in the 24th century. Yeah, let me go ahead and pull out my tricorder and I can get the information for you. Oh, cool. Look, here it is. It's all broken down for you already. Remember when it used to be like sci-fi and just no way in hell, man.
There was stuff that we can do, but it's not in the capabilities we have now, and people don't get that.
Joseph?
Yeah, I was just, it's magical thinking, basically. There's no difference between that kind of science fiction and having an imaginary friend that does everything for you, or imagining that you have superpowers where you're able to do everything yourself.
I guess, but I mean, between the damage that people like Dr. Malone have done, and ex Dr. Andrew Wakefield, I mean, it's just and it's harming our country overall. You know, as far as like our quote unquote superpower status, we've lost it. China is quickly emerging, and I had mentioned to somebody that I had seen Neil deGrasse Tyson give a lecture. I think it was back in 2015 ish, something like that. It was a while back, and he was showing a good, I don't know, prognostication of where we were headed versus other countries. And by 2030, we're going to be, down at the bottom, between losing the technology race and outsourcing everything and the dumbing down of society. We're toast. And we did it to ourselves.
Well, it's almost, somebody brought up the Darwin Award, but I mean, in this kind of situation, people who survive by mutation, they get along just fine when the economy's good, when, we have all the resources we need. But in times like this, when we're confronted with like a real dire situation, well, people like this tend to be the first to go because they don't understand. Not only do they not understand how their behavior affects reality, they don't understand how reality will affect them.
And part of that kind of makes me wonder, from the way that you're saying it, if there is a correlation between the level of, I'm not going to say this right because I had it differently in my head, the comfort level having changed over all this time.
Well, the comfort level, we're seeing it already in change. People, especially the anti-vaxxers, who don't like wearing masks, that's a change from before.
True.
They can't walk into a restaurant as they want, or they can't move around, freedom of movement as they want. It's already changed. So that's a drop in level of comfort, so to speak. And that's basically what they're protesting against, I think.
Yeah.
Majorly.
Yeah. Seeker, let's make sure that we get this over here. Seeker saying, we didn't do it to ourselves. They did it to us. There is something to be said for that. And, you're quite right in that. And there are going to be some people that are going to take umbrage to me for agreeing with that, because we are the government is supposed to be the mantra, is supposed to be the way that it is. But, as we pointed out once before, many times before, the current, at the very least, federal level for legislation, this legislative branch in the U.S., the average age, as I recall, is, well, it's kind of up there. It's not as old as I would have, as what I remember it having been. I can't go tappity to find it out, so bear with me a little bit. But my government in the United States, the only way I can describe it is, it's old. It has a tendency now to be old. There are people who have been in these positions of authority for literal decades.
Oh.
And that's a problem. That's a problem. Because there's no way of keeping up to date. There's no way of keeping up to speed. There's no way of pivoting quickly in order to find out, okay, this is a bad thing that we just found out about. Okay, we should go ahead and we should take care of that. Let's go ahead and do that. There is none of that.
Well, I mean, where I was coming from as far as we did it to ourselves, is, I'm looking back at like 2007, which is not that long ago,
Okay.
where, people who were educated were considered elitist and disparaged. And people were taking pride that, that they couldn't spell and they didn't read, and that education was something to be derided and all of that. And that has taken hold in a big way in this country. And we're seeing it at the local levels, at the state levels, even some at the federal levels. And that's dangerous.
That's an extension. Talked about that before. That is an extension of the whole you're a nerd, you're pigeonholed, you're an social outcast, a social pariah, whatever happens in the formative years, the early schooling years, and it's never been addressed. That form of social, I don't want to say social formation. I'm thinking of the wrong. I don't know what the right term is off the top of my head for some reason, but I mean that's these.
Say the last 15 years have done a lot of damage to us.
Oh, and the worst part of it is it's well before that it was fermenting.
Oh, yeah, but that's when it really started taking off. And then now you have people that are sitting in Congress, like Madison Cawthorn, that are like, you don't need to go to school. I didn't go to college and I'm doing fine. And,
Now there,
people like that don't need to be in any position of power. I'm sorry.
yeah, there is something to be said for you don't need to have gone to college. It is an incredible help.
Oh, yeah.
College, university is quote unquote supposed to help you boil down life experiences that would have otherwise taken you, a decade and a half to learn in various areas in hopefully a 4-year time frame instead. Which, I mean, think what you will about that. There is something good that comes out of that. Not everybody necessarily needs that, but
Right.
but as was pointed out, yeah, Stephanie, you're right. It started long before 2000, and there is something that I have said before. One of my grade school teachers had said to me and my class, "You, meaning the class, you will be the first stewards of the 21st century." Reminding you that, and I will admit it, I'm 39 now. I was born in 1969. All right, I might be a little bit hazy on the age currently, but we were supposed to have been the stewards of this new dawn. And a good many of us didn't get that opportunity for a lot of different reasons. Not the least of which was, remember how I told you how people had been in these positions of authority for, literal decades? Well, if they stay in those positions and don't teach it down when they leave, perhaps because they have died, it happens,
Yeah.
there's now a vacuum because there is nobody who has been taught how this stuff is supposed to work. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole, should it be a Republican, should it be a Democrat, should it be a conservative, should it be a liberal, should it be it doesn't matter. The functioning, how these things are supposed to operate, you don't get taught how it works, how it's happened. And because of that, these clicks that have happened, that I can easily remember back in the 80s, of who's a nerd, who's a burnout, who's the perfect princess, who's going to be an unwed mother in 6 months after graduation. All this stuff is there. And now that that has happened, where my group has come through and left that vacuum because we were never taught how to do it, we are now 20 years past that point. And the chickens have come home to roost. And it's continuing to show up and being magnified because it's just laying bad on top of bad. I feel like I'm not exactly explaining it quite correctly, and I apologize if I'm not bringing it out correctly. I'm really hoping that I am.
Well, and to be fair, our generation, the Gen Xers in general, we're kind of like, we're in this weird place of being like a quote unquote sandwich generation to where, we're having to work, well, not me personally, but some of us, some people out there having to work 2 or 3 jobs and still raising kids and having to take care of elderly parents. And that's just a weird position to be in. It's hard to do all of that. And, I feel like, our generation kind of started getting shafted education-wise. It started doing, worse off than what our parents did. And really didn't have time to properly, give to the millennials and the Zoomers that followed behind us. I feel like, we were failed, and I feel like we failed them. And it just kind of snowballed.
It's funny you say that, because weren't we? I'm not quite sure where I fall into, and I don't know that necessarily.
Kids.
That's what I was gonna hit. That term doesn't exactly have the weight that it used to. Latchkey kids. We're the ones where chances are both parents were working in some capacity or other. So when we got home from school, let's say, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we had a key, we let ourselves in and locked the door behind us, and we did whatever it was alone, away from any family for a couple of hours until the family got home.
Yeah. And ones that were working through at 11, they might not get home until midnight. Which was, my situation. I would get home and have to do my homework and, fix something to eat, do chores around the house, put myself to bed.
And that wasn't the way it used to be.
Nope.
Did Joseph, without going too far into it, did you have to deal with that, or was that even a something for you up in Canada way? Or maybe you're not.
Did we lose you?
Well, it's still connected. I do not know what's going on. Did you type something over in the Discord thing? Let me see what's going on over here. I see somebody. Oh. Yeah, he was typing over in the... Okay. Yeah, he stepped away. That's... Okay, you know what? This is why it's good I keep my phone nearby. Anyhow.
Okay.
Is what it is. The whole thing with the latchkey kid thing, like I said, with so many other things, it never used to be that way because, well, I mean, there were a lot of different factors, not the least of which was one person went out to worked a 9 to 5 and 8 to 4, came home and earned enough money for a house, a car, vacation to support a family of 5, give or take. I'm including some families that, had pets instead of, that third kid. Don't really need a third kid, but uh secret, no, Joseph will be back momentarily. And I kind of wonder, if things had been different economically, would that have made it easier for our generation to support itself and to move on into these other positions of learning and authority and legislation and such to help keep moving things along? I don't know that there's any way of really answering that, but it's one of those things that's going through my head right now.
I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about.
I don't know who's been doing it, but I saw that there was somebody on Twitter that's been posting graphics of how things have happened economically and pointing out specifically that how things were before and specifically after Ronald Reagan, meaning 1980.
Yep.
It's really interesting to see how this stuff has happened. I don't know that Reagan was necessarily the flashpoint, but he was definitely the bell ringing of bringing it all on like crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Reagan was basically the point. In the past, we used to try different techniques to assert an authoritarian control over people. What they think, how they behave. But around the Reagan era, whoever's running things, the people actually doing the real thinking in our society, understood that people are basically, they're going to police themselves. So if you put, I keep on using this push to talk, but it keeps on, for some reason, it keeps on cutting off halfway through. So sorry about that.
No, you're coming through fine right now.
But, okay, my phone's not detecting my finger. But the people who are the real decision makers in our economy and all that, well, they discovered that if they just push the right people to the front and get them to say the right things, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to be up front asserting authoritarian control. They can be in the background. Whereas, their puppets will be taking all the responsibility. They're going to be spotlight, not the people actually making the decisions. It's a new way of running a country. Because you see in the past, you always had a central figure that was up front, who always took the fall in the end. But in this new evolved economy, well, the people make the decisions. They don't have to be in the spotlight anymore. And if you set the stage in a certain way, people are going to behave in a certain way, and yeah, they don't even have to be present.
Kind of makes me wonder if what we now refer to as the grift was kind of fermenting even then. Why bother working hard when you can just set the rules in place that you're always just gaining anyway, and you don't have to do anything else after that?
Well, I mean, I think so because, I mean, he's the one that came down with that whole, you know, trickle down economics.
Yeah, whichever economist it was that threw that one
That,
into his lap, I would really like to kick him right in the nards.
yeah, because that myth is still perpetuating and it will never ever be true. It has never worked.
And I've seen the thing that kind of goes along with it that says, yeah, we've tried it for 50 years. Yeah, it doesn't work. It's now time for something new.
But the whole of the economy seems to be working on that principle, trickle down.
Mm-hmm.
The levels below are always hoping for the scraps falling from the table above at every level of the economy.
And it's never happened. And
It-
yeah, the other side of the coin on that is with his, doing things like firing, air traffic controllers and all of that stuff that put fear into people of standing up for themselves because that was a huge blow.
Agreed. Agreed. And the problem with what you were saying, Joseph, I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way. Not that these people are at down a certain level, are just waiting for these scraps to come down and trying to gobble them up when they happen. Is that the people who are over a particular level are just, you're going to go ahead and you're going to give me the biggest piece of the pie, right? Good. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure that you keep staying there so you can keep giving us a piece of the pie. That's good? Good. Like I said, the whole, keep that thing just rolling because they can just keep that rolling.
There's a dividing point in the economy towards the top where when you have a major part of the population, because basically as consumers, what we're doing is pushing our money up. And when somebody finds themselves, somebody towards the top of the pyramid finds themselves in a position where they can accumulate wealth from a good part of the population, the effect is actually opposite. Where those at top will basically share the resources, which is the greater population's money, amongst themselves. That's where all the maneuvering and mergers and all that's where that's happening. But below a certain point, it's trickled down. And it is trickled down. I mean, that's how it works. Trickle down economy, whether it exists or not, doesn't have anything to do with to what extent it works. If the people at the top are taking 90% and passing down 10%, then, well, trickle down economy is still there, but it's dripping, it's not flowing.
Yeah, there's a certain problem with all that. And as Seeker, no worries. Take care of yourself, please. From all of us, stay safe, stay healthy. Don't worry about how long it is next time we see you. Just know that we just want you to stay safe and healthy, man. Take care of yourself, eh? And Stephanie had pointed out, there's nothing new about this. You need to go back a couple centuries to see when this operated before, but it's not new, just selfish. It's true.
Yeah.
The selfish, this is what I was saying earlier. I would love to be able to be, a conservative as far as to government oversight, but the selfish nature that keeps happening has the requirement for a referee to keep everything playing on a level playing field. And that playing field is tilted heavily and steadily has been tilted. And that's part of the problem. And the piece that kind of pulls these things together back to the overall, well, we've been doing this trickle down thing since Reagan, and it's been 50, 60 years almost. So, I mean, we've been doing it for this long. Why change it now when we've invested so much after all this time? Why change it now? I'm sorry, I would really, really like to go ahead and stick a finger down my throat with how this feels, but I mean, I really don't feel like you can on camera. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a correction,
Sure.
to what I said earlier. Because it wasn't so much before a trickle down. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this a bit, but it's more because when the flow upwards is greater than the flow downwards, then effectively trickle down doesn't exist.
Yeah, see, the problem is the way that trickle down had been sold to the public back in the day, and I still remember this, it makes sense if there is an honest effort. The idea that it was sold to us, and Brigid, you might remember a little bit better than me because you're just a little bit older than I. The way it was sold was, if we give extra money to the companies themselves at the toppest points, they will then be able to invest in giving more to the people underneath so that the company can invest in getting better equipment so that the people who are working can be paid higher wages so that things can flow down. As Joseph said, the economy would actually flow down to the people who, well, should be making the money. But it never really left that top pot, except in little drips and drabs of stuff that was just kind of sprinkling over the sides of the larger and larger cup at the top.
That would be a thing of all the money invested in a company through all the money and all the work invested into a company, even through the, from the lubricant, the lowest cleaner in any company. If all that investment was maintained in the company, that would be a thing because, all the work of everybody is an investment for the well-being of the company, which is good for everyone in the company. But what makes the situation bad is that all this investment goes to the top, and then all the shareholders at the top, well, they just lop off they just lop it off. It isn't even, there's nothing to trickle back down. Once the money goes outside of the company into the shareholder pockets or whatever, it's never going to trickle back down.
No, that's exactly right. People at the very top, quote unquote, executive level, the people who've got, business cards, or at least those that used to still have them, they're the ones that end up with literally millions upon millions of dollars to be in the position that they're in for whatever, whether they do anything or not, and then millions upon millions of dollars to leave and go to another company at a similar level to get another millions upon millions of dollars and potentially crash out a company while trying to lower stock prices so they can buy stocks and then bring the company back up to fruition and sell stocks at a much higher level at that point. But if they crash a company and all these people lose their jobs. Well, oopsie. I'm specifically looking at frickin' you, Toys R Us.
Oh, there's
Yeah, basically taking a company's profit and going to the casino with it.
Yep. I was going to specifically, I was instead going to target, believe it or not, Commodore business computers with the Amiga, and the guys that came in and basically crashed the company and killed off an incredible piece of computing hardware. But it's a little niche for some people. But Toys R Us, I mean, hey, who doesn't remember Toys R Us? Oh, that's right. Canada still has Toys R Us because they were a completely separate entity. So, yeah.
yeah. I mean, and the thing that I don't understand, why businesses don't try to invest more in employee retention. I realize that, okay, they're making money for their shareholders and trying to be cheap and all this other stuff. But if you look at places that have high turnover rates, it costs money to keep retraining people. And it seems like to me, if they would just take a little bit of the money and try to keep employees around with knowledge that have been around for 10 or 15 years, that they would be a lot better off.
But we saw how well that worked for Circuit City.
Yeah.
We talked about that one. Circuit City laid off all of its well-paid employees who were the ones that had the experience. And, well, there are a handful of you who are listening right now who are just like, what's Circuit City?
Yeah, exactly.
That's my point.
But, I did happen to see an article earlier, today that's, specific to the industry that I'm in now,
Mm-hmm.
where, uh, a bunch of the IT people were all let go, and all of the IT was outsourced to India and caused so many problems that the doctors were all in an uproar because the customer service was horrible, and it was taking them days to weeks to get their you know uh, computers functioning and things like that, that they decided, maybe we need to move some actual competent people back in house because this isn't working out so well. And I'm like, gee, who would have seen that one coming? I mean, I'm surprised that they finally decided that they needed to pull people in house to do the work, but I'm like, yeah.
I would have known. I'm pretty sure I would have known.
Yeah, but we're talking, a hospital system that covered several states, and it's like, why would you? What were you thinking? They weren't. They were trying to get as much profit as possible.
I'm glad you said it because I was about to.
And maybe paying people the equivalent of $3 a day to, do all of your IT stuff. All of it. They did not have a single in-house IT person on staff anymore. Yeah, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Some people are finally starting to catch on. And I hate that we had to go through a pandemic and all this other stuff, and that we've had a lot of people in the service sector die.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, and people who were, quote unquote, essential workers that died early on. But, it is causing a realignment in the labor market in some places, and I think that's a good thing.
A change from let's celebrate all the essential workers to why don't you all get back to work at this minimum wage job, which is under a living wage.
And it's not happening. People are refusing to do it.
Yep.
And even locally, as bad as wages are where I'm located, McDonald's is now starting out new people, or they're hiring people at $16 an hour plus, depending on experience. I never thought I would see that happen here, ever. They were paying them 8 and a quarter pre-pandemic. And it's about damn time. But they can't get people willing to work for 8.25 an hour here anymore. People just will not do it.
And you know what? I
I wouldn't
say,
either.
good on them.
I'd be like, cook your own damn hamburgers, you know? Because customers were still wanting food. They just didn't have any employees.
We're getting pretty close to having to wrap up, and I don't think I've got very much left in the tank for me. The only thing I've got left to say about the whole damn thing is I'm I'm 52, 53 this year. You know, I'm not as spry as I used to be, not by a long shot, physically, but my generation grew up with one of the most amazing changes, technologically speaking. Some of the most amazing social upheavals when we were young. And as somebody pointed out, all these times where you forced us to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and there's this little section in there that basically says everybody should be treated equally and fairly, and now you want to get all upset because we actually want to follow through on that? You got us to live up to the original Star Wars idea that maybe, just maybe, we can actually make a difference against the big evil. Yeah, what do you think is going to happen? I just hope that it still happens.
I did see one that I really liked that Rebecca Hensler, she, is heads the Grief Beyond Belief group, and is I think she's a school counselor or something in California, but she put one on Facebook that I really really liked. Instead of calling them unskilled workers, maybe call them non-degreed workers, because all of these jobs, even if they're waiting tables or whatever, require skills. And, she's college educated and she teaches in a school, but she said there's no way that she could be, waiting on tables, because she'd be dropping things everywhere and not able to keep order straight in her head and all that. These all require some sort of skills. And some people really suck at those skills. If I had to go re-roof a house, I'm not capable.
You might end
And I
up dead.
call that an unskilled person. It's a skill I don't have. So maybe we ought to stop denigrating those people.
There's something for that. Joseph, what do you want to end up with?
Not much I can add to that, unfortunately.
All right. That'll work out fine. That case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm a little more tired than I otherwise normally would have been. I just realized, and I'm not quite sure why. But you know what? We got to the end of the show. That's all good. So, guys, as always, thank you very much for being with us. Hope that you found something worthwhile in all of our perspectives, and you got something to think about for the week ahead while you're trying to dig out in some areas of the North American continent, because snow, Boston, man, jeez. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say it. Boston, you guys are right there on the seaboard. You could get hurricanes. You don't usually, but every once in a while you kind of do, and now you're getting hit with this snow. Yeah, that's normally not supposed to happen that way, but it's what you get being that close to Canada. So, you guys could move, I guess. You could move down to Florida and take over there. That'd be really nice. Just thinking out loud. Anyway, over the chat, Seeker had to take off. Take care of yourself. Stephanie, you take care of yourself too. And Steph had also said, the good side of the plague, it did not last very long in the Middle Ages. Well, yeah. Yeah, there is that. I don't know what else to say on that one, but I mean, it's true. I mean, if that's your way of saying, maybe it wouldn't be so bad to kill off a third of the population of the world. You know what? We could start with people who are in legislation and kind of work backwards from there. And I mean, it's just thinking out loud.
Well, I mean, there are, actual segments of, certain people's constituencies, not gonna have to identify whose, that, Darwin is having their way.
Sadly.
Florida.
I don't know if anybody else noticed how much there was an emphasis on the duh part, but it's perfectly understandable.
Yeah, keep the duh in Florida.
Joseph, you take care of yourself. And like I said earlier, it's good to have you back. You take care of yourself, huh?
Yeah, you too, sir. And all of you.
Appreciate it. So, Brigid, who shall we go ahead and say a grand old FU to this time? Because I got a couple people that I'm thinking of, but at the same time, I'm thinking more along the lines of tick-tock, tick-tock. Or talk, tick, talk, tick.
I'm actually going to say Joe Rogan at the moment for unleashing Dr. Malone on people and getting him more exposure. Fuck you, buddy. And had it not been for you doing that with him, then we wouldn't have all of this drama over Spotify in the first place.
That's a whole other thing right there, isn't it?
So tired, Shujin. I am just...
No, I get you. Last item I just want to say as a general FU to this feeling of why aren't things happening in law enforcement and justice happening faster? Anybody else who's feeling the same damn way, you're not alone, but just remember, I forget exactly how the line goes, but the wheels of justice turn. Slowly, but turn they do.
Yep.
There's a reason why they describe it that way. Go look up the old information on what an old mill grinder used to do with a couple of big old pieces of rock. Figure it out. And, everybody, thank you very much for being with us. If you'd like to be in touch and get all our contact information and get the audio version of the podcast, take a swing over to holycrapthevlogcast.com. All the stuff is right over there for you. Phone number, if you'd like to leave a message, not that it gets used very often, is 859-HCTV-554. Country code 1, 859-428-8554. We'll be back next week, assuming that, nothing untoward happens. And just know that we're going to keep doing our best to be here for you. It's not always fun. It's not always pretty. But Lord knows, it's good to have a place to come to talk, So, till the next time we're together, everybody, as always, I wish you the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. My lady, it is going to be too damned many years later. But I'm still in love. Matane Fujin. I love you. I miss you. Dream of me. Till the next time we get together, everybody. As always, good night.